the spirit guide in your own astrological chart? Have you been able to get in touch?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it Babylon?
No.
Okay.
No.
Babylon's still higher than that.
That's, yeah.
Okay. Pardon me if I'm ever crossing a line.
No problem.
Are you comfortable comparing it to an Indian deity just so that our viewers can understand better and so that even I have a better understanding?
Sure. You're looking at the aspects that you'd find somewhere around Kalima, or you could look to the Tibetan, you could look at Kurakula, you could look at any of the more wrathful deities.
Okay. Ugra Devta. Same meaning.
Sure.
So you can't pray to Babylon at home, or you can.
Yeah. This prayer is fine. Yeah.
Okay. And you have a certain ritual associated with Babylon.
Sure. I mean, like a Hindi practitioner, like I have an altar, I burn candles, I make offerings, I say prayers.
Comfortable talking about the offerings?
Yeah, the offerings would generally be wine is an offering that's very acceptable, red wine. Blood offerings are occasionally made. This isn't like a common offering, but I've made blood offerings.
Your own?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Animal sacrifice isn't something that really happens in the West anymore because our relationship with animals is so different from previous periods that people don't have the skills to perform these kind of offerings. I have friends who work in African diaspora religions, so voodoo, or Brazilian religions like Kimbanda, and they will use animal offerings a lot because it's part of their culture. It's part of what they do, and they have the skill and the expertise to do that. We don't have that there, and it's not a common thing.
It's a part of our culture as well.
Yeah.
When it comes to Kalima.
Yeah.
It's called Bali Pratha.
Yeah.
And it still happens in Kamakhya Devi Mandir, which is one of our energy hotspots in India.
Yeah. So those kind of things, very often a practitioner is making an offering of sexual fluids or of their own blood. This is what's normally used. Yeah.
How did you learn all this?
How did I learn all this?
Through people you met.
A combination of books, people, and contact with deity. This is how our tradition works.
And how many years has it been?
35 years maybe.
Now, you spoke about making blood offerings. On the surface, that sounds like something that would scare the average person. Hey, this guy is like offering blood. Is he worshipping demons? What is he doing? Okay, I understand this. I understand what you're doing because we're dealing with bending reality here.
Yep.
And we don't even know the ancient guidelines that were in place for thousands of years before you and me were even born. You're just following ancient guidelines because that is how our reality works.
Yep.
If you do a certain set of steps, you will bend reality in certain ways. That is what a Hindu puja is as well. That is what your version of a puja is as well. This is just a part of your puja.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Are you comfortable talking about a blood sacrifice?
Yeah, I can talk about that.
I would love to know your perspective on it. Whatever you're comfortable sharing it. And I also bow down to your deities because this is coming from them. So I take their permission to speak about these things.
What I'm doing is as you say, it's quite left-hand path. Like it's not a practice that I'm suggesting is something that the majority of people should pursue. Absolutely not. This is a very limited, difficult thing that only a few individuals are ever going to be drawn to doing. And some of the individuals who are drawn to do it will also be somewhat disturbed. Like you'll find people who have psychological issues who are drawn to this kind of work. So it's not without risk. It's not without risk of obsession. It's not without risk to people who are engaged in practices of self-harm, or people who are particularly masochistic. And I'm confident that I have none of those characteristics within me. But for me to make an offering of my blood to my goddess is an understanding that that all of my blood ultimately belongs to, the mother goddess. That my blood ultimately all flows into her cup. So for me to make a blood offering is simply for me to reaffirm that promise that my acts and my intentions are all towards that point, that my blood ultimately belongs to her. So it's not a rite that I do regularly. There is a famous rite that's in the Western tradition called the Mass of the Phoenix, where one cuts oneself and makes an offering of the blood to the setting sun. And that's done that can be done literally every day, just with a small amount of blood. Very few people engage in that. I don't engage in that. I've performed that ritual in the past, but my blood offerings tend to be much more precise when I'm doing something major, when I'm making a major commitment. So rather than it being a regular puja practice, this is something which is saved for a major ritual. So yeah, I've engaged in various forms of ordeal practice for the goddess. So I've worked with cutting, I've worked with hooks. So I've done flesh suspensions. I've done these kind of body rites.
What is a flesh suspension?
When you hang from metal hooks.
When you hang?
Yeah.
That's a ritual?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this kind of work, these kind of ritual practices you find in the West now. Rare, but these practices are there.
Okay. You spoke some time ago about a blood sacrifice that you do to the sun.
Mm-hmm.
You've done this as well?
I've done this as well, yeah.
What is the outcome of doing that blood sacrifice?
This is a sacrifice which is really done for a couple of things. One, for vitality, for health, for energy, for connection with the cycles of the sun as it moves through the day and through the year. So the God of our universe is very much the sun. The sun is the source of life, the source of light. And by identifying ourselves with the sun in its various phases, at its rising, at its midpoint, at its setting, and at midnight, we also identify ourselves with the undying circle of the sun. So we become part of that larger cycle, and it's part of becoming part of the machinery of the universe. Because however strong my personal will is, however dedicated and focused I am, I have a limited source of energy. But the sun, as the light and force of the universe, has energy that I can draw on, and I can become attuned to, and I can pull those powers through me. So it's part of that.
You said you do this in front of the setting sun.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Are you comfortable talking a little bit more about the process?
Sure. This is the ritual I'm talking about is a ritual that was introduced by Aleister Crowley, and it's called the Mass of the Phoenix, because the phoenix is the symbol of the bird which is consumed on the nest and is reborn like the sun. So the idea of going through that cycle of death and rebirth with the sun as it passes through the day and as it passes through the year also places us in an understanding that we are part of these processes, that we can go through our life's journey and we can go through into death and into rebirth if we wish to go into rebirth.
And you felt a change in your own body?
Yeah, I felt a change in my own body with it. I'm really hemophobic. I react very badly to blood. So for me, as a ritual to perform it, to cut myself, or on other occasions to be cut by someone else, is is very demanding for me. It's not something that I choose. It's not something like I move to, like as a natural predilection. So there's a great deal of energy and power that can be unlocked from me from doing that.
But are you saying a prayer while doing it?
Yes. Yeah.
There is a particular
There's a prayer that goes with it. Yeah.
Okay. That's how you make it work.
Yes.
So if someone just takes the hand and cuts it in front of a setting sun,
No, it's not likely to do anything.
this is how pujas work.
Yeah.
You need to combine the mantras
You
with
have to combine everything.
rituals.
Yeah.
Okay. Is this what people call witchcraft?
In the West, it could be called witchcraft. The witchcraft is difficult to use as a term because on a global basis, witchcraft is always associated with evil, and the witch as a figure is often seen as a supernatural figure and not a human being. So a lot of my work, which is more natural, which is more spontaneous, which is more done in the land and with natural components like the plants, stones, waters, wells. All of this could be under the idea of witchcraft. This is a more animistic kind of way of working, whereas magic very often describes a more formal way of working, perhaps with a circle on the ground and perhaps with all the candles and paraphernalia. It's a much more ceremonial approach. So yes, like I have been described as a witch. It's not a word that I use for myself because I don't think it's appropriate to use a lot of these terms, like unless it's applied to you. If I am practicing something that is witchcraft, then I am then in that moment I'm a witch, but that's not my identity. In the same way that, as a magician, when I step outside of my circle, like I'm not, I'm leaving something there. I'm not carrying that with me everywhere I go. But yes, witchcraft and magic in the West, these are quite interchangeable terms.
Gotcha. You spoke about the prayer you said during the sun ritual and the prayers you do in all your rituals.
Yeah.
Is it in Latin?
No, I tend not to use Latin. I use some Greek. I use some Hebrew. I use English. Yeah, I use some magical languages. I do some work in Enochian, which is an angelic language. Very often you find. So if I think about, say, a ritual that I do regularly, a ritual I do every day, it has Greek words, it has Hebrew words, it has English words. In fact, yes, I do. And there's another ritual that I do that does have Latin. But the use of these different languages is very, very, very common in magic because, like with mantra, it puts you into an altered state because it's a language and a mode of expression that you only use in a ritual setting. So you're able to access that part of yourself by using those languages.